Did you hear, ladies? Drum Stuff just dropped their 3rd episode. I can't wait.
Ready?
I'm ready. All right, welcome to another episode of Drum Stuff. This is episode 3, and the quality probably hasn't gotten any better, but it still is what it is. We're still both independently unwealthy, so we go to work all the time, and but we're getting her done. And so this one here, we're going to kind of transition after Jim answers a couple questions. Since a lot of things that happened in the drum stuff world since our episode 2, and one of those things is some of the videos we already have out there is Jim and I were able to go record him playing drums for the first time after around 3 years. So I start off by asking him a question about was he sore after that, because he played for quite a while, and he hadn't played with a full setup like that. But anyways, he answers the question, but just to keep it live, or whatever you want to call it, real, I'll play the question I asked him and then his response, and then we'll get into some other stuff. Drum stuff. So here's a question for you, Jim. After your raw, just playing the drums after that amount of time, I know you've been playing a single drum with your hands. But yeah, like you said, a full set. So I'm curious, this is going to make you be vulnerable. 55 years old. Were you sore the next day? Like, were your forearms hurting, calf muscles, or did that not happen? I'm just curious, because if it did happen, I can relate. Just haven't gone back to trying a few random things like indoor soccer, and the next day I had to get creative on how to get out of bed. Had to flip my legs over first and use some momentum. So that's a little more extreme, but I know just raw like that, and then you played that, and then I don't know how long you played, but quite a while. Some stuff we didn't get on video. So yeah, that's the big question for the day.
Okay, I got a question today. We did the big recording session on Saturday. First time I had played my drums in, about 3 years, 3.5 years, something like that. I was trying to do the math again. But yeah, Josh was asking me if I was sore. And no, not really, not really. Um, I kept it pretty low key. I try to play in a way that is, I think when you first start out as a drummer, you tend to grip things more than you should. You tend to play a lot tighter with your muscles. The secret to going fast is staying relaxed, but that's also the hardest thing, and it takes a lot of practice, and it takes consistent practice to be able to keep yourself relaxed when you're going fast. Not an easy thing. So for those of you out there that are starting out, that's a good practice, is to just go slowly. When you start to get your muscles tightened up, then back it back down and just work your way up to that kind of speed. It takes time. Give yourself some patience to do that. The other thing that's important in playing drums is posture. You play some, 3 or 4 hour gigs, and if you're not sitting with good posture, your back's going to be sore at the end of the night. Your legs are going to be sore, that kind of thing. A lot of guys over the course of decades playing with bad posture, uh, backs to their joints, things like that. Obviously, try to keep yourself in what I call drumming shape, which I am out of right now. But yeah, try to keep yourself a little bit physically active. Drums it's a physical instrument, and you can do some damage to yourself. You can, worst case, it's really bad, and it cripples you. If it's not so bad, then yeah, you're sore and you're doing things like that. But it is really important. So sometimes what I found when we recorded that on Saturday was being able to look at myself and see well, how am I sitting? How am I moving? Am I moving in a relaxed way? Am I moving in a fluid way? Or am I moving in a choked and kind of a jerky sort of a way? And so that's part of what I look at. It's not just what it sounds like and what's being hit and that kind of thing, but am I flowing? Am I being relaxed? And so it was good. If you get a chance, record yourself, record your posture, see if you're doing something that might cause you some problems with your back, with your neck, shoulders, that kind of thing. And yeah, do try to get a little exercise. Try to watch what you eat. Pay attention to what you eat and how does it make you feel if you're playing gigs regularly, um, that kind of thing. So, and there's a lot of exercises out there that you can do. I'm not going to go into that kind of thing on this channel, but um, you can certainly get some different things that will help you. But yeah, that's a long way to say no, I wasn't sore.
All right, you certainly took the long road there, but that's what makes it fun. If you would have just said, nope, I wasn't sore, we would have no content and no interesting stories and good advice along the way. So, anyways, one time we were driving with our kids and my son, he seemed like we were taking forever, and he goes, Dad, are we taking a long cut? So instead of a shortcut, maybe that's just the way you talk, Jim. I don't know, but it's fun. Um, so I'm gonna circle back to a couple things you shared in one of the previous ones we did. You're talking about musicians like working together and how a drummer can really be a real critical player in that. And I know from watching you, you're even with the single drum that you're really good at that, pulling everybody together and get them on the same page and everybody doing their part. Um, I'm not the drummer guy, but I do have a drumming story I thought I'd mix in here that has to do with musicians working together and teamwork and how cool that can be when it happens. Um, I was in the country of Haiti once years ago, and if anybody knows anything about Dominican Republic and Haiti, they don't have the greatest relationships sometimes, so there's some tensions there amongst some of the people. I was, like I said, in Haiti, and I was in a church and just visiting. And there was the worship team consisted of mostly Haitians. I think a couple American missionaries were in it, and then the lead singer was a Dominican Republican guy. And they were practicing for Sunday. This was on Saturday, and they were trying to do that Stephen Curtis Chapman song "Let It Rain." And the drummer was this wiry little Haitian guy. Just looked like all muscle, but he was real short and but he just looked like tough as nails. And he was on the drums. And when it would come his turn to do the drums, he would just like go crazy, and they'd be singing "Let It Rain," and he just like bah, 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 like Animal, like you mentioned earlier. And he was just so excited to do his part, but it was too much. And so the Dominican guy would just kind of look at him like basically kind of like chill out, just come in smoother, man, come in smoother. And then he just couldn't handle bah, 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 bah. And you could tell that it was getting kind of tense in the room, and a lot of the people were rolling their eyes, getting frustrated. But I just kept watching this guy, this Dominican guy. I think he was playing bass, and he just was really calm and just really kept just saying, you got this, you got this. And he got him like smoothed in with the drums pretty good on Saturday, and it was really cool to watch. And then Sunday hit, and I was in church, and they played it, and he just nailed the drums perfectly, and it all blended together. And I kind of just saw the Dominican guy look at him and just kind of smile and nod his head like, yeah, we got it, we got it. So anyways, that's my drumming story. It was really cool to see, and every time I hear that song now, which is, there's not a lot of lyrics, and it leads up to that drumming part, and it's really cool. So I can hear what you're saying, and it's fun to witness as even just a person watching. So all right, well, I think now we're going to switch to something kind of random. um Jim keeps saying I keep asking good questions, and then all of a sudden he blindsided me by saying, you should have asked me this, Josh. So then he goes on his own little thing, grabs the mic, and he goes on this fun little tangent about how when he was young, who he liked to listen to, and concerts he went to, and how he would. I picture kind of a funny, cool drummer slash nerd guy with binoculars at a concert, just like actually watching the drummers. So it's fun little part to listen to. So we'll add that in here, and that might make it an episode. We'll see.
Of drum stuff. Yeah. Okay. Are you excited with me? Yeah, we're going to talk about drum stuff, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. So, usually in these situations, Josh asked me questions. And so he forgot to ask me the question of who were some of your influences, Chim? And so I'm going to ask myself, Chim, I asked myself, now I'm dead to me. Ha ha ha. So some of my drum influences growing up, I don't know if I've mentioned it before. I grew up in a big family. There was 8 kids. There was 6 boys and 2 girls, and I was the youngest. So I could walk into any of my siblings' rooms, and at some of them yeah, some of us were in the same room. But anyway, everybody had their own collection of music that they liked, the radio station they were playing, or maybe uh, uh, 8 tracks or cassettes or records, depending on how old the siblings were. You may have had some of those. And so, yeah, there was a lot of influences. Plus my parents. My parents were a lot older, and so I think I've said it before on an episode. Buddy Rich, the great jazz drummer, was one of the first guys I remember seeing play drums, and just was a huge influence. Um, some of my older brothers were. My oldest brother was 18 years older than me. The next one, we had a lot of similarities in our musical tastes, and he was 16 years older than me. So a lot of the stuff he was playing was from the late 60s into the early 70s. Drum stuff specifically, the Who. And yeah, just hearing this guy just kind of go crazy, old Keith Moon just blasting away, and this perpetual motion machine, it's just all this a lot of notes, a lot of movement, a lot of crazy kind of just sort of very free and out there and just blasting away. And it was that era of music. They were really pushing limits. They were trying to just do things that hadn't been done before. So definitely Keith Moon from the Who. We listened to Jimi Hendrix. Mitch Mitchell was the drummer there, and he had a real jazz background, which I found out later. But I was like, oh man, I like the way this guy plays. Very interesting the way that he played against this crazy guitar. Yeah. So I'm just hearing all these different things. Um, the band, yes. So a lot of these were British influence as well. So there was a kind of an interesting thing there. Even Jimi Hendrix was American, but Mitch Richard, brother John. So anyway, um, maybe that's part of it because a lot of those British-based groups were influenced by American artists from the 50s and early 60s, which was influenced a bit by jazz and things like that out of the 30s, 40s, stuff like that. So there is kind of you could draw a line, you could draw, some threads in a tapestry, if you will. But yeah, just hearing these guys play and how the band Yes had a couple of different drummers, and just really interesting what they called progressive rock, and they were doing some very, very innovative thing, different time signatures, and just very innovative music. Um, Golly, yeah, really. I spent a lot of time just listening, listening, listening. What are they doing? What is going on there? Where is this music going? And it just challenged me out of kind of more of a some music is a little more predictable format. to go from this, the chord structure is maybe a more compact, a little easier to see where it's going and feel where it's going. And some music is not, and that's not a judgment on either kind. It's just um, some of the things that were really causing me to wonder were those kind of things. Um, that I think I was 6 when the first Boston record came out, and that was another one that was kind of like heavy drums and a lot of movement and motion and stuff like that. Not a lot of complex drumming. It really fit, I thought, what was going on in the music, but a lot of drum fills, a lot of motion, a lot of hitting a lot of things, and that was fun. The band Kansas was one that I had. I remember I had a Walkman. This was the 80s, right? Actually, probably late 70s. Had a Walkman, and I had a cassette that had Left Overture on one side and it had Point of No Return on the other. And I can remember many a night going to sleep with that on my head, listening to all these wild songs that had all these different time signatures and trying to count it, say, what is he playing in and where is he transitioning from this time signature to the other one? So for those of you that don't know, time signature is how many beats in a measure. Music is there's measures of music, and most like just straight ahead kind of rock and roll music is what they call 4/4 time signature. So there's 4 beats in every measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Start over. 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of this stuff that Kansas and Yes and all these other people were doing was in like 5/4 time, 5 beats in a measure, and then sometimes it'd go to 7 beats in a measure, and then come back to 4, and go to 3, and then go to 2. I mean, it's just wild, and the way that it's so amazing to me if you can write a song that feels like it's flowing and yet it's changing all these time signatures in the middle of it. That's quite an accomplishment because you can write complex stuff and it's technically correct, but it still has to flow. It still has to be a song. It doesn't. It's not a drum exercise where you're just counting these things and you're practicing how to transfer from one to another. It's a song, and some of those songs made radio play. I mean, one of the most famous uh, odd time signature things is the song "Money" by Pink Floyd. It's in 7/8 time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you can count it out. But there's an old jazz song called "Take Five," and that was done in 5/4 time, and it they made songs out of them, and they became very popular songs. And people don't even realize what time signature they're in because it flows, and it's done really well. And those attracted me to try to figure out what in the world's going on. There was a time, and I think every young drummer is that way, where you get influenced by guys that are, a friend of mine called them chops guys. So your chops are like your ability to play all these different complicated things. And Dave Weckl was a drummer that played with some of these jazz groups in the 80s, 90s. Chick Corea is a jazz keyboardist, and Dave Weckl was his drummer and played in different stuff. Super complicated. I could never play anything like he played, but I loved listening to it, and I totally appreciated it. But it was way beyond my abilities by far. But what a great treat for my ears. Um, there are some people that you go for that reason is because they just play a gazillion notes per measure. And then there's some people that put so much feel into two notes that just blow you away with the feel that they get. And there's a guy who did a lot of studio work by the name of Omar Hakim. He played, if you've heard the Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms Grammy winning thing. Well, he played on most, if not all of that. He played with a lot of people that I was listening to. So I'm just hearing this guy and I'm like, who is this guy playing? And so we would always get the liner notes, right? If it was an album, you'd have the sleeve and it'd tell you who plays on all these things. The cassettes, you'd fold out the little paper and just read every single word of it is what I would do. And find who's playing that, who's playing that, who's playing that. And there's a song by Anita Baker, Giving You the Best That I Got, I believe is the song. And it starts out and Omar Hakim hits two notes before the song starts or before the vocal starts. But the way that he hits those two toms and the influx that he puts into that is just like, good night. And it's just like, it's beautiful. And it's two notes on one drum. And it just, it'll blow you away, you know? And it's similar. There's guys like that that can just do so much with so little, but somehow the emotion comes out of
So this is a bathroom break intermission. Uh, we only get 10 minutes per voice text, and then it cuts you off. So Jim has maxed his out once again. And so we'll continue on with his next one right after this.
yeah, just a continuation of that thought. People that can put so much into, yeah, I don't know. It takes a lot to be able to condense. I think myself, and all most of us young drummers, we have to learn that, and it's hard to learn. You want to just fill it up. You want to be that Keith Moon and play the Who songs, you know, and just and have a blast. And it is fun. I'm not very good at that stuff, but I can make a lot of racket and it not make a lot of sense. But it is fun to play drums like that sometimes. But I don't find that as satisfying to me as I've gotten older and learning how to just do nuanced stuff. I think I mentioned it previously. I don't know if it's on drum stuff, but it's it was written in the magazine, the drum magazines that I would get. They would talk about less is more. And I never understood that as a young person playing drums, but now I do much more. And so I was going to go into some other influences, and the Police. I didn't really like the Police at first. They were kind of a punk band, and I really wasn't into that. But I came to such a greater appreciation of them later. Now Stuart Copeland is the drummer there, and that he is an incredible drummer. Um, he started that band, but anyway, a friend of mine saw him in a drum clinic, and he said he just brought a hi-hat stand out and just played that and just blow you away with just a hi-hat, not even any of the rest of this of the drum set, you know. And later on, when Sting went solo, he had some incredible drummers. Now, Omar Hakim, that I spoke about previously, he was one of those. Manu Katché was one. It's just great drummers. Vinny Colaiuta was another one. I got to see him in concert. I saw Sting one time, and that's who was playing drums for him. And I thought, my goodness. Same thing with, oh, why? Yeah, I saw Al Jarreau a few times, and he had some great drummers with him. But one time, I'm there, and I'm sitting pretty far away, and I don't think I had binoculars with me. We didn't have great seats, but we were there, and we were here, and I'm going, who is that drummer? I know that drummer. That sound, the way that he plays is no way. That couldn't be Steve Gadd, could it? No way. And I couldn't see the guy. And he starts introducing the band, and he says, yeah, behind the drum set, legendary drummer Steve Gadd. And I'm elbowing my buddy, you know, and I'm going, oh my, I told you that was Steve Gadd. I knew it was Steve Gadd, man, just the way that guy plays. And to be able to see that guy once is the only time I got to see him, but he's a legendary guy, man. And part of the reason is, and this is a lot of musicians are like this. To me, I really admire musicians that when you hear them play three or four notes, you know who it is. There's not that many musicians that have that kind of talent, influence, um, innovation, that kind of thing that you can tell when it's them playing. But there are a few, and I love that kind of stuff. Now, as far as the closer to home influences maybe, or a little more rock and roll kind of stuff, um, I was a big Van Halen fan, so I did like Alex Van Halen. I was 14 years old when 1984 came out, and this Hot for Teacher song, and it's like my brother and I that played the drums. He's like, that sounds like it's like some kind of Harley Davidson or something. He's just got this sound, man. You know, it's just really cool. I found out much later that was a tribute to another jazz drummer, Billy Cobham. So I've learned all kinds of different things along the way, far beyond when I first heard that song. But yeah, so I liked Alex Van Halen. I saw them a bunch of times in concert. A lot of fun. Um, good rock and roll drummer. But uh, so that was 14 when that album came out. When I was 11, this is what probably was on par with the Buddy Rich moment. Was my brother got Rush's Moving Pictures album, 1981. So I'm 11 years old, and I hear Neil Peart for the first time, and that was it. If I didn't want to play drums before then, I really wanted to play drums after that because again, it was one of those things where you're just like, what is this guy doing, and how are three guys getting all this sound? And again, they did stuff that was odd time signatures and just very different. The structure of a lot of their songs was different, and I'm not sure what happened with movie picture. I became an instant Rush fan, and so then I would start collect because that was kind of the middle of their career. They had a lot of music before then, a lot afterwards. Neil Peart was actually not their first drummer. The very first album they ever had a different guy, but he was the drummer for the rest of it. There was something about moving pictures, the way that it was recorded, to me, the drums really stood out. The parts that they put together really stood out. Um, and I can't play like Neil Peart, but I love listening to him play. And a lot of the famous songs, of course, they're great, but some of those, what you would call, some of the deep tracks or whatever they call it, ooh, man, they have some really cool parts to them. And again, I would get so deep into what he was doing and what Geddy Lee was doing on the bass and how they fit together. Um, that Alex Lifeson is the guitar player, and he would be doing these great things. And sometimes I wouldn't hear him for years because I would be so locked in on the bass and drums. But yeah, definitely a huge influence for me. Got to see those guys several times in concert. What I enjoyed about Rush when I saw them, I don't know if this is everyone's experience, is that they played it live as good or better than the recording. And I know some of that probably is tempered with the excitement and the adrenaline of being at a concert and at a show, and it's fun. And live music does that for you. There's times where in that live performance you make mistakes, and the audience never even knows because they're having a great time. They're caught up in the energy of the moment, and it's really cool. But there are recordings of Rush and things like that, and it's just live. And I did have binoculars for that show, and I'm watching him do his drum solo and all these different parts that I know are coming up in certain songs, and he just nails it. A very difficult thing to do, and just kind of cracks a straight face. It's just like another day at the office kind of thing. But yeah, just incredible talent. And yet, I don't know. It was again, it was something that you would put these complicated things together, and yet you would still make them a song, and it flowed, and the weird time signatures and all these crazy fills and stuff, and yet it flowed, and the music, and the three of those guys have that chemistry that just is unique, and they're one of the rare bands that played for so long together. They didn't break up. They played for a long, long time. And to me, one of the reasons with that is some of the stuff that I had alluded to in some earlier Drum Talk things is about the desire to produce great music together and to always honor each other as your fellow contributors. And I think maybe more than technical stuff for me, what I can share with a lot of people is that thing of be a part of something. Be a part of something more than you, and don't just think that you're just kind of waiting. You're always waiting for your chance to do a drum solo, because Neil Peart was always filling things up with all these great fills and drum solo stuff, and he's great at doing that stuff. Um, but to me, from what I gather in the interviews later, I mean, we were pre-internet, so there weren't interviews, there weren't all these things. You just didn't know everything about people like you can now. but you knew these different nuances, and then you would suspect things, and you would sort of say, "Wow, I wonder how was this done?" And then later on, there would be an interview, and you'd go, "Oh, wow, okay, makes sense." And so, I think they had that thing to where they weren't after the fame or the fortune. They were after making great music, but not at the expense of their friendship. And that's a powerful lesson for any drummer to learn, any musician to learn. And so that, yeah, I probably hit that a lot of different times in these different talks, but it's super important. And if you're a musician out there listening, um, press into that, man. Find that out. Be
More than just a solo drummer, I think is what Jim said, but it cut off. And so we're still experiencing some glitches in our system here. Apologize for that. There was a time there, Jim, about halfway through one of your talks where I don't know if your microphone got caught up in your goatee or in your collar or whatever, but it's in there, and it's a cringe moment as far as from an audio standpoint, but didn't seem right to cut it out. So yeah, hopefully people are enjoying this. I am. I would definitely say you're a cool drumming nerd, showing up to these concerts with binoculars and picking out the drummer, and that's some cool stuff though. So yeah, if anybody out there is hearing these and they know somebody in their life that's a drum enthusiast that maybe from that era, I'm sure they'd get a kick out of hearing all those names, and it might be some good information for people who want to check out different styles of drumming and stuff and see what Jim's talking about. So be sure and like and subscribe and comment. And we're going to call it a day here on Drum Stuff. Thanks for listening and have a great day.